tonight? How do you want to think about this list? Yeah, okay. So 2 thumbs up. That's great.
Mine was not.
Great. So you might be wondering why I'm here. I'm your facilitator, and I really have 4 main roles. I'm not here to make decisions for you, but I do want to see you move your conversations forward, be productive and constructive. So first, my role is to help you build your agenda, maybe not tonight, but in future meetings and subsequent meetings, I will help you build your agenda so that we stay on track. Next, ensure inclusive participation, making sure that everyone has a chance to speak. Keep our work on track, that we're staying on agenda. And finally, capture any actions that come out of the discussion. And Andy is actually going to help me take notes so that I can refer back and make sure that we capture everything correctly. So we will be here until, the clock is right? Until 8:05. Okay, just daylight savings. So because we started about 5 minutes later, we'll aim to end by 8:05. I have 2 goals for our meeting tonight, for our discussion tonight, and they're very straightforward, but I hope that I will hear a lot of valuable feedback from each of you. So the first one, I wanted to ask all of you on the committee, what would you like to accomplish by January 2023? And that date, I chose January 2023 based on the order that was adopted by the council, that this ad hoc committee may be disbanding or dissolving by January 2023. So I see that as a good milestone for us to look forward to. So I'm going to go around the table, and if you can think about, where do you see this committee going? What is one achievable outcome by January 2023? And I will start to write that down on my flip chart. And hopefully we'll start to see some things. Yes, Councilor.
Could I just ask a question? I'm trying to learn more about mass housing. And so let's say that we had, you're familiar obviously with the Brownsville project. What would, does mass housing get involved with that type of project in financing or in some way? I just don't know enough about it. I tried to read about it on the About Us page, but I don't know the practical part. What would you do, let's say, if there was a school in some other town, and maybe would you provide financing, or did you?
Yeah, sure. So mass housing, we are a quasi-public state agency. We also function as a nonprofit. We do our job in 4 ways. My role is on the community assistance team. I can provide this, facilitating community conversations. We have a team that provides financing. We have a team that provides homeownership opportunities, and we have a data team. So the question is really about what you think, where we want to be in January 2023, but Mass Housing Partnership beyond that date, we could provide support in all those 4 ways. So, Councilor C, you want to start by thinking about maybe achievable outcome by January?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I just took some notes here in preparation. So I basically had three things, but you're asking about January 2023. So my goal is not to start everything from scratch, and to basically start working on a list of priorities for a disposition, meaning ordering total affordable count versus getting maximum value for the building versus getting more for, say, the gym, a priority list, and then basically building the building blocks for a disposition order that comports with the following 4 things: the zoning that was passed, trying to save the gym, protecting the Article 97 protected playground, and protecting the historic value of the original, at least the original schoolhouse. So that by January 2023, we would have these building blocks to then write a disposition order and go to the market, as we did in 2017, and see what it has to say about it. That's my goal for January 2023.
Yeah, I think those are really great goals to make sure that we're actually moving forward with the disposition. So I think that those are really great. I'm going to go to Councilor Lane next.
It's all that. Mine's much more simple. There's some sort of direction.
Some sort of direction.
Yeah. As Councilor Z said, those 4 items are very important. a lot of speculation as to what can be done with them, but I think just to have some sort of harmony moving forward and know what we're going to do.
Okay, great. So very similar to Councilor C, some kind of action forward. Mayor?
Okay, I'll go to a different route. I kind of want by January, I'd like to, and I don't know how we do that in this group, but I'm imagining we're going to get more information from people in different ways. So I'd kind of like to hear what residents, particularly abutters and that neighborhood feels about the Brown School. And it's been a few years since we've gone through any kind of process like this. So we've got a lot of different people moving in and out of the city, and I'd like to see what the neighborhoods think about what they would like to see in that space.
So updated neighborhood input. Thank you. Andy, did you want to say anything, or you want to? If you want to pass, feel free to
No,
pass.
that's quite all right. I would share, I guess, both what the mayor has said, but also I think what Councilor C did mention as far as having a priority for generally speaking, the points of consensus on what the future use or adaptive reuse of the property should be holistically. And I say that because when I first got here, my first concern as I looked at the Brown School as a project or initiative from the city was, and I expressed it to the then mayor, was my concern was there were multiple uses and activities that the community has been talking about with this property. It's still relatively small in size compared to some of the other projects we sort of see as planners. So my concern was just that those competing uses in a very tight area become potentially hard to do all simultaneously. And I would like to see some progress in that. That is, a consistent path we might be able to take forward with, all the points of input, of course, but to make progress and to go beyond where the building has been vacant for, some period of time or underutilized for some period of time. And we certainly have needs in the city, whether it be housing or otherwise. We have needs in the city, and it would be good to see that property put to good use accordingly.
You any answer?
Yeah, so it's not terribly different than what's already being said, but for me, it's coming to a consensus on what our priorities are for Brown School as a whole. But I'll add to that, I'm really hopeful that this group can break out of circular discussions and actually make some progress. I will fully admit that I come to this with concerns about circular discussions, and really hope that we can find our way to compromise that breaks out of circular discussions. True. Andrew.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said thus far. I think I would, going back to what I think the mayor was saying about getting some feedback and community input from the butters, I would sort of expand on that a little bit and stretch it out to get some of that community input from the broader stakeholders from the community at large, because I think there are a lot of stakeholders that have an interest in the property and what it becomes and could be served by it in a variety of ways, depending on where we go. So I think getting that broader stakeholder buy-in from the community at large would be a useful exercise in this process to inform whatever we go to the city.
So broadening the reach of your community engagement.
Correct.
Great. I'm hearing a lot of the same themes, so this is really great. Councilor Vogel.
Well, I'll take a different turn then. As a follow-on to what Drew said, I would like a stronger definition of who those stakeholders are. We obviously have the community surrounding the building, the abutters, if you will. We have affordable housing trust that's in front of us as well. Personally, I would like to see that as a focus. I also, to the point of the Ward 1 councilor about disposition order or going out to the world, I would like to see that a little bit broader range and maybe looking for input from the world, their ideas, developers or others involved in developing such buildings, and get their assessment of it before we come up with our solid disposition order. I think that it would be very helpful to get that input.
So broader input from
Potential developers, from housing authority, et cetera, just some solid, professional, learned, background.
That's thoughtful. just taking more of a thoughtful approach with the disposition process rather than jumping right into an RFP.
Exactly.
Yeah, so many wonderful statements here. I agree with them all. I just echo a couple of statements. One, I agree that it should be a broader perspective in terms of getting input, not just from the immediate butters. I look at the school as a city asset, not just that immediate neighborhood. And so I'd like to make sure that we have sort of a broad perspective. I also think that we may need to make some compromises. I think that I sort of see that on the horizon. And I do agree that getting input from some developers might be helpful. I mean, that is what is sometimes done with a municipal asset. You put it out so that you can get some feedback from developers about what is financially feasible, because we really don't know. The building's been sitting there vacant for a long time, and it's really hard to know what's possible. I guess lastly, I think it would be helpful perhaps to the city to have some information on what's been done elsewhere. I mean, there have been a lot of school conversions that have been led by municipalities, and some of them are really exciting. And I'd like to feel like we can have some excitement and enthusiasm about this opportunity.
Great. So look to successful reuse, school reuse models. Okay.
Well, I'll be very direct in what I personally would like to see by January. I would like to see consensus around affordable housing at the Brown School. I don't know how many units that necessarily means, you know. I agree with what others have said about needing input and some professional direction, but we've been talking about this for years, and to me, it is absolutely the best use of that property for the community, for that property, and just to fill the need that we have in Newburyport.
And last but not least, Counselor Jonathan. Were you going to hear me from there?
No, I followed it up. Thank you. First, I just want to say thank you to everyone for their thoughtful comments and perspectives. There's really nothing I think that anyone would disagree with, which is a really good sign. I guess that I would like to be maybe similar to the last comment, a little straightforward and blunt. You know, I am new to the council this year. I did campaign on, you know, one premise of the need for affordable housing in the city and affordable senior housing. And it really should come as no surprise that that is my main objective, is to find a way to get the best affordable housing for seniors that we can in the space we have. But I also want to add that really, frankly, I'm here for my constituents. Specifically, you know, I may be the only one in the room that's gotten such phone call, but literally a woman waiting to find out what's going to happen with affordable housing potentially at the Brown School, because she lives in a building that's going to be sold and turned into condos, and she's lived here her whole life, and you know, is elderly, and at the end of the day, that is my reminder daily of why I even want to be involved in this process. So it really comes down to finding a solution to whatever compromises might have to be made, or working within the boundaries we have, but agreed that we need to sort of expand, get more information, get more input, really echoing everything everyone has said, but just, yeah.
Okay.
That's about it.
So what I written
I don't know
down.
how you translate that.
To summarize, affordable housing is a priority for you, Counselor.
Yes.
And you want to be responsive to your words, have concerns, and finding a path for compromise and solution for the property, because you're the one fielding all the neighborhood calls, sounds like.
I can't guarantee that, but yes, in summation.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I'm hearing that everyone is interested in moving forward, which is great, and we're all here willing to compromise, finding a way to compromise, and you want to build consensus, which is really positive. And I agree with Councilor C that we're not starting from scratch here. And we've done a lot of studies, we've done a lot of debate around different uses and different policies and all the different permutations for scenarios for property, and you're ready to take action for the next step. I'm also hearing that what is the next step for disposition? How do we move forward? Knowing that the market can be volatile, and based on a lot of the unknowns and variables with the school, how do we make sure that we are putting out solicitation that will actually return with feasible projects for us to consider? Does that sound about right? Okay, great. So given all the kind of common themes and agreement that I'm hearing about this position, I do want to bring up an example about a more thoughtful approach as opposed to an RFP. You've done an RFP before, you've got responses, but there is another way to take it more slowly, make a thoughtful approach for disposition. And you can start by, as Madeline has said, I think Drew, you also mentioned, I forget who else, but testing what is the interest out there, understanding whether there is even a market for this. Are there teams out there who are qualified, have the capacity to deal with the unknowns of a project, complex project like this? And you can do that through a request for information. You have also heard of this as a request for qualifications, and you put in that a set of priorities and driving principles, as Councilor Lee have mentioned. So I'm glad you brought that up first, for the market and the developers to come back with ideas that you can react to without committing and obligating yourself to selecting a proposal. So you're not committing yourself to dispose of the property or select a project. So it's a way to kind of test the market, see what are the best ideas and teams out there, narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 proposals, and invite them back for a more detailed RFP. So that is one path that you could consider. There are many different examples of how this approach was taken, mostly with very complex projects. So Mass Department of Transportation, they hold a lot of properties, public properties. They don't really know what to do with all of them. They have put out something like an RFI to see, hey, we have these properties. What do you guys think you can do with it? These are kind of our main priorities. Tell us what your best ideas are. Waltham, they have the Fernald School property, pretty well known. They tried that as well. But the one that I was actually very closely involved with was the Salem County Commissioner's Building and Superior Court. Those 2 court buildings are right in the downtown. I forgot to mention that I also serve on the Salem Redevelopment Authority, currently as a state appointee. So those are very complex projects, maybe as complex as the Brown School. Disposition issues, ownership issues, title issues, rehab issues, astronomical costs to rehab them. And what they did at the time was to put out an RFI. And these are our development goals, our driving values that we heard from the community. This is what they would like to see. Give us your best ideas. Tell us what your team looks like, whether you have the expertise to actually put a deal together on a complex project like this. And from there, they got 5 responses, I believe. They chose 3 to invite back for an RFP, and it became a more robust RFP process that you're all more familiar with. Right now is in the permitting process, a lot of conversation, but it's been very positive to have that two-step approach that you want to be thoughtful and see what's actually out there. And then you take the more kind of concrete approach to an RFP. So that's my suggestion. We don't have to talk about it in detail tonight. We have about half an hour left. We can save it until the next meeting, but I wanted to go to the next part of our meeting tonight is what we had heard around the table. What are our priorities? So here I want to do another go around again and hear from you all. What is most important to you for the Newburyport community? And the reason why I'm asking this is that we talked about what are our priorities, what are our shared goals and values. This is really where we can start to identify some things of what should be driving the future of the Brown School. So I'm gonna start a new sheet, and I'm gonna start with Counselor Donahue. Go backwards. Around the table. What is most important to you?
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing. Karen, what's next?
Same.
We're talking about subsidized housing.
Right.
Yes.
Same. Okay, 3. That is the most important thing. Okay. Counselor.
Can I add the word senior?
Senior.
Can affordable senior housing.
Give you its own category.
Yeah.
Senior housing. So age restricted.
I'm gonna go a little, take a step up. I'm gonna say maximizing value. And what I mean by that is not necessarily monetary value, but encapsulating what we're talking about here. Affordable housing being something that's valuable in the community and bring that value, potentially senior housing, for instance. And there might be other uses or ways to utilize the property to derive even more value for other members of the community. So maximizing the value of the property.
So looking at all potential uses.
Yep.
Okay.
For me, it would be particularly senior and veteran affordable housing.
Senior +1, veteran housing.
I'd like to add to that I do think the gym has value. I would like to see us, if possible. I don't know that it's realistic, but if possible, I do think the gym is a valuable asset to the community. So I would like to be able to utilize some sort of space that is still available.
Can you talk a little bit more about the uses in the gym that you feel are most important? Not the space itself, but what are the uses that you feel a space like that?
I think it's a space where the community, and particularly the South End, the neighborhood where it sits. So somewhere for, basketball games, youth programs, just community center in general, and the space to gather in general. Pickleball. Do that inside. Sorry. Yes, exactly. There you go.
So this is what I like to call the third place. It's not a place you work, not a place you go to sleep at night, but a place where you gather with the community, socialize, recreation, community oriented, on site.
But it is worth mentioning that I'm not sure that's realistic.
Make sure I capture that. Andy?
Just before just with a caveat to that, my answer, I think, like the mayor said, I think it needs input from the neighborhood. We haven't had that in recent time per se. And I also agree with a comment that Drew had made earlier that it's also a citywide or a larger stakeholder input that's needed for something like this, because it is just an asset to the immediate neighborhood, although it obviously is. This property, or has been, this property is also an asset of the city at large. And so, for instance, given the fact that we have very few properties that can go towards, you know, things like affordable housing, I do think on the whole, in my view, although all those things should be inputs to this, I do think on the whole, as planning director, I think that affordable housing is the one that bumps to the top. In general, we could, you know, debate particulars, but that's the one that we continue to hear a constant need for. We have very few properties that can go towards that. And that's one that we've continually, you know, discussed in relation to this property, irrespective of particular details. So to me, affordable housing, and again, irrespective of which particular population or subset we might be focused on, there's a need for that, period. So to me, that would be the priority.
Okay. So added you there, and then making sure that there is a robust community engagement process as we go through this. Mayor?
Yeah, so my two kind of already been said, but I would say senior affordable housing is my number one. But my number two is kind of what Drew was getting at. But for me, I consider the gym, and even going back to the last, you know, iteration that came out 6 or 7 years ago, that first floor for potential city use. Not necessarily first floor, but other potential city use there in that building. So maximize the units you can get there, but there also might be an opportunity either for a city office space or community art space or something like that. But you know, I go to work in the city hall every day that we have offices in closets in some places, and some places don't have offices at all. So if that, you know, again, getting to that creative use of the space and maximizing the units that a developer would want to come in and use, maybe there's an opportunity there for some other municipal uses.
Okay. Thank you. Counselor.
Mine's along the lines of maximizing value basis and highest and best use. So while affordable housing, senior housing, everything is important on that list, you know, those are goals. But to me, seeing what the value of the property is and what the remediation costs will be, versus looking around and funding other things like NYS, potentially with the sale, affecting a sale to a developer, rather than trying to undertake the complete renovation and seeing actually what that renovation is going to cost in this day and age. So I guess it's, you could put me down for maximum value, but highest and best use and the best bang for our buck citywide.
Okay. So maximizing value, highest, figuring out what the highest and best use, but having maybe the development.
Having the goals of whatever the financial, the best financial aspect of it's using it in a different part of the city to build affordable housing or any of the above.
Okay. Great.
Not necessarily just that footprint.
Yes.
What that footprint could bring us.
Counselor.
My number one priority is moderation. So, you know, unlike some of my colleagues, I think listing out specific things may be implying that you would take those above all else. My top goal is moderation. So that may mean that everything has to be a little bit attenuated or lowered, or maybe some things can get a little bit extrapolated. I'm sorry, but it's hard to not talk from having sat on the RFP thing for 6 months and all the specific knowledge I have from being on these things. But in my opinion, moderation is what's going to get this thing to go forward. And if it's just, you know, it has to be this, and this is the only thing we're willing to give up everything else to get it, then I think we're going to have continued challenges. I happen to sit on another committee about another contentious piece of property in town. And that has been the outcome of 9+ months of discussion on that, is that moderating is basically what needs to be done. So that's my top priority. My latter is that, you know, some have said I want to be direct. I do too. I feel like I'm here in large part for the neighborhood, and broader group of stakeholders is great. And certainly I think everybody recognizes the importance of affordable, but I don't think anybody would want to, you know, sort of overdo it in a neighborhood. I don't think they'd want to do that to their colleagues or compatriots in town, right? Even if they live across town, they wouldn't want to overdo something and be unfair to another neighborhood because of, say, needs in the city. So moderation for me is the key. And that has, you know, where that line is has been basically the basis for this conversation for 7+ years. And I'm excited to get to there, but I'm trying my best to follow your lead here on this list.
So I just want to make sure I capture this correctly. Sure. So moderation of priorities, so not just not hyper focused on one or two uses, and then kind of try to unlock us out of that one thing and
the neighborhood.
The neighborhood. Yeah. And then the next one is not to overburden one particular neighborhood with one particular use.
Yeah, affordable housing is a citywide need, right? So I mean, that's fair, and then the neighborhood has its own needs too, and just finding that moderation, that balance.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know if we have Councilor Wright, who part of the group. I just want to know for the record that he is remotely attending. I don't know if that was noted earlier, but he is in the participant, so to speak, in the back.
Okay, so it looks like we have a pretty good list of priorities that I think puts you in a good position to build some consensus. We have about 15, 20 minutes. We're making really good time. I want to talk a little bit about what is going to happen at our next meeting, and then we can just open up for discussion if we have some time. So at the next meeting, what I have planned is to take everything I heard today and summarize your priorities and your goals for the next meeting, and maybe come up with some recommendations of what you as a feasible, realistic next step. I had a discussion with Councilor Roble about when our next meeting could be, given the holidays are coming up. I don't think it's realistic for us to meet in December and then January. So I think the next time we meet is probably going to be January. And so that is when I will bring back the summarized feedback that I heard, come up with maybe a very brief report of what you can think of as the next step. And I will be open to any other agenda items that you have. So how does that sound? Councilor, Councilor, you go ahead first.
Well, thank you. I was going to just add to that, that we have in the works some figures coming our way. So hopefully we'll be getting those, the most recent, look at the costs involved. And so we can include that analysis, or maybe bring that along in that meeting as well.
Okay.
So maybe get that to you. I don't know how you think about doing that.
Could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, I think the mayor can speak the most about that.
Can we put a hold on that?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. Yeah, I just want to make sure we're on solid ground with January, the next meeting in January. But
yes,
is it realistic? Maybe the next meeting is January. Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna go.
Well, I just wanted to probe a little more around this. I can't remember a time we've done an RFI. I don't remember seeing that. So first question would be, do you have any, would somebody have some that they can share? How in depth does that document have to be? Does it have to be borderline RFQ, or can it be like a page or two and say, could we put in, say, here's 4 scenarios? Do you like any of these, or are any of these feasible? I'm just trying to get a sense, like maybe that is a path forward.
Yeah, sure. So the one that I was involved with from the beginning, the courthouses in Salem, the RFI itself was 3 pages, 3 or 4 pages. The rest of it, which is like 20, 30, 40 pages, are all appendices, past studies, all the things that Andy listed earlier, just so that whoever responds, what team responds to the RFI or RFQ is very well aware of the context, the history, the constraints of the property. But the main portion of the RFI is very clear on what our community goals are. For the 4 houses, it was housing production, downtown vitality, connection, because it's in a very busy intersection. And there's one more I'm forgetting. But it was very clear that whatever the response is, that they have to follow these 4 main goals. And if you don't respond, if you're not responsive to these goals, you're not selected, invited back for an RFP.
Can I just ask one other question? So from when you issued the RFI to the completion, or to the issuance of or the success of an RFP process, how much time elapsed between those?
For Salem, that was about 9 months.
Okay.
It was under a year.
So same year. Okay.
And then the RFQ, maybe another 9 to 12 months. But those are details that this group could work out if you decide that that's what you want to move forward with. And maybe that could be a goal for January, that maybe this is something that you are deciding that, yes, we want to try out this RFI, RFP two-step process. That could be something that is very much in line with what we just talked about, that we want to move forward. What is the next step for this position? What does the development community think about this property with all its complexities? What are some feasible ideas that we can maybe consider, but not commit to with an RFI, and then go to the RFP when you're ready? I saw another, was it Counselor? You have
Yeah, so I just want to say that, I don't know, I have some hesitancy about us not meeting anything until January.
Okay.
It just, you know, personally, we have a goal of January 2023 to have output. If we're not meeting anything until January, it just seems to me that we have so much to do. This is waited for so long. We aren't engaging community input into this process today. If we don't meet again until January, I just.
Yeah, what does everyone think?
No,
We
it's
squeeze in a meeting in
Can
December?
Can I just ask
Yeah.
more of a context question? So I'm newer to the process, so pardon my ignorance, but what's driving the January 2023 timeline? So it's an ordinance in place for the
Order.
Yes,
order. Okay.
there's an
So could that
order.
be amended?
Sort of every.
So I do want to push back. I think having that date really keeps us moving forward.
And I don't deny we should have that, a date. I'm
Well,
just
not a
wondering-
date, but a time frame
Yeah,
for
yeah.
us to
Just
have
wondering
an
if-
outcome.
And I do think that timeline was aspirational to a degree,
Okay, yeah.
so I don't think it's,
Part of
you know, I think there could be a, flexibility with that a little bit, but I do think, to the council president's point, we have to figure out what is the time frame we're looking for here to get to an end result, and how does that play back to.
With that all said, if it is January 2023, then I would tend to agree with the counselor on that concern,
Okay.
because I would think we'd want to be at least a couple more times before
Okay.
January.
Well, I think
We're trying to meet that time.
I think a lot of it then has to do with what you can get back to us and when, right? So a little bit falls onto you. And if you want to put together, or if you want us to put together another meeting, essentially within the first couple of weeks of December, I mean, I'm happy to participate, of course.
Okay, so what are we thinking? Maybe squeezing the meeting in December? I'm available to you whenever.
By the way, at no cost, just so everybody knows.
I agree.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
At the very least, so appreciating the fact that you have work to do to be able to come back to us. And also to Drew's point, so when the order was put in, that we had a bunch of discussion about that. Is this realistic, these timeframes? Ultimately, I will say I don't think that's a realistic timeframe, but I also do think it's important to at least bookend us somewhere and give us something to drive forward, right? But having said that, I think at the very least, a meeting where we can gain community input, give the public an opportunity to see, which requires no sort of work on our part prior to that. Just having something, I mean, that's something we can certainly get some done.
So how about, so here's my suggestion. We meet in December. We talk about our development, or not development, our shared goals and values at that meeting, and maybe a proposal of what the next step for this position would look like. We maybe can take a half hour, 45 minutes to talk about whether we agree. This is a good kind of framework to move forward with. And then by January 2023, one of the goals that we discussed, sound like there was a lot of consensus, is that we put that out for community input. So that could be like a open meeting or whatever is most appropriate.
Which would be the open meeting, January or the December?
January.
Yeah, so December is another. So
Another meeting like
yes.
this, and then January more of a
So sometime
community-wide meeting.
between around the 15th of December, whatever day that is, I was trying to look at.
Counselor?
I was just going to say that December is, I think we can meet. I do think it's hard for residents, right, if they're traveling or whatever, just because of the holidays. But my challenge is that the priority list is, we're all going to agree on all the bullets on the priority list. The question is the order, So I mean, I would rather get community input once we start ordering it, because that's really where you get the friction, is where which one do you elevate to more importance, and that would then drive into which RFI or RFQ is most attractive to you. So I think we have to get the universe of them first, then we have to start to at least try and get, this is a top tier importance, this is a lower middle tier, and then start refining in order. So
yeah, so
list that makes sense.
That's a really, yeah, that's a really great point. I think the maybe priority list is not a good way to describe what we're doing now, but a set of values with no particular order for the RFI and see what you get back. But if you do move forward with the RP, that is really where you can evaluate the proposal based on what is most advantageous based on, you know, are they proposing more housing, less housing, more community uses or municipal uses. So that is really where you can kind of prioritize by very specific exercise of scoring. But if you think that just open it up to the development community with a list of values, but not ranked in a certain way, and see what kind of ideas you get back, then maybe you can kind of help guide you on what the priorities could be later on.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like that's where we fell down in 2017, okay. and others could comment, and I don't, you know, if you have perspective, but I think we didn't have the community consensus on what the order of priorities was. So in other words, do you pick the one that has a higher affordable percentage with more units, or do you pick one that has lower affordable units with lower density? I mean, and I'm just picking two specific things, but it could be any number of things. And I think, I mean, I'm going to defer to the plan director, but we've again experienced the same challenge with another property in town. We didn't have the community, we didn't know what the balance points were. And we fell down because we just didn't know where to go. We didn't have that discussion ahead of time. So maybe you're right, maybe the RFI adds a point in the process where it gives a little bit more conversation, but I think one of my thoughts was this group would have that debate, you know, openly and say, yeah, look, you know, if we have to pick between this and this is the more important of the two.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the meeting, I talked about, you know, this is the adaptive issue that we have here. We are all here at the table, and you all said yourself that we need to build compromises and consensus. So the fact that you feel maybe ranking a priority list a certain way has led you to not compromise and not build consensus. Maybe the approach that you take is that you put out a list, whether it's 10 things or 5 things, out to the development community. They tell you, we see your values, and we are telling you that this is the most financially feasible project based on your values. So maybe there are some things you can't control, that if you want maximum age restricted housing, maybe the market is telling you, we see that, and we will try to fit that into our concept proposal, but the numbers just don't work out. And here is what we're proposing as a compromise. So you could put out a list of values without ranking and see what you get back, and then better tailor that for your next step, which is an RP, or if you decide to not move forward at all, that's okay too. I'm not here to decide for you. So we could talk about that more at the next meeting. No, Karen.
I guess I'm wondering about the order of things, because it seems like the conversations we had before with the community, I remember someone really wanted it to be an art center, and there was a lot of interest in that. And then he researched it and found out it just wasn't going to happen. So financially feasible. So I guess I'm mixed up in my own mind. So I'm talking out loud a little bit, but I wonder if we did the RFI with a list of things we're interested in before opening up again to the community, see what comes back, then have a community meeting and say, here's what we've been told, you know, by the experts are feasible things. What among these are of interest? It just might focus it more.
Yeah, I think if you open up to the community and then you get more priorities, or not priorities, but more values and input from the community, like we do want an art center, that could be built into your RFP as an incentive, that if you're able to find a way to make an art center work, then you get extra points, right? It's the city is in the driver's seat when you write an RFP. But obviously an RFP cannot be overly prescriptive, because you're just telling the development community this is exactly what we want, regardless of whether you have the financing to build it or not. That usually does not get you results. So being flexible, and I think having a list of values to see what comes back could be a way to be flexible. with these kind of added things for bonus points.
So I just wanted to chime in a little bit. I wasn't clear, Councilor, you like the idea of the list at the kind of an unordered list and hearing what the development community will come back with on that, or do you wish to prioritize the list? I didn't quite catch it.
My instinct is it'd be better if there was at least some measure of prioritization, but I guess to be fair, if I could read a couple of RFIs and responses, maybe I'd learned something I didn't know, and maybe they can react better to this more abstraction than I'm thinking.
Okay, to use that word, I prefer the abstraction. I agree that it would be nice to get our priorities, not our priorities, but to get our ideas out there and have it come back and let that be our guide so that we're not scrambling. It feels to me that if the community, if the development community comes back, looking at our list and saying, we see your list, here's what we can do. That gives us an understanding.
Yeah, you have all the leverage when you get the proposal and you get to see which is the best one.
Yeah,
to move
that's where I would be with that.
Okay. One last comment before I wrap up.
Last comment, and you can swat this down because I don't know if this is mission creep or going outside of what we're trying to do here, taking our eyes off the ball. But going to what Councilor Z opened with, which was the question about mass housing and financing. I'm wondering, does it make sense, whether it's you, and I'm not trying to give you work to do, or if it's us doing our own homework? I certainly know some of these answers. Putting together a list of resources that we could put into helping facilitate development redevelopment of the project. I'm thinking things like even programmatically, like UCH TIF, or other forms of financing through the state or other avenues that might incentivize a developer to want to take a closer look at the project.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of value in having someone like MHP say, these are the resources that you should consider to make this project feasible. But I think it's to your benefit to have something like an RFI put out there with the requirement that you need to tell us how you plan to finance and permit this project, that you actually have the knowledge of what the resources are, prove to us that you have the experience and the expertise to do this, and then you pick the most qualified team or a set of teams that they think based on their qualifications. So I think that's the best way to get the most qualified team in the beginning, rather than have someone like MHP handhold everyone throughout the process. And that's actually exactly what Salem did.
Do you want to talk about the middle of next month?
Yeah, so we have a couple minutes left. So next meeting, sometime in December, we will figure out the date. At that meeting, I will bring a set of values that will drive the next step of this position. It sounds like maybe this RFI two-step process could work. I will bring some examples, maybe even share with you in advance so you can look over them. And then we can talk about the next meeting, the third meeting in January, where we open up for community input and how we plan to approach that. What the format, who do we reach out to, kind of coming up with a community engagement plan. So those are the three main things. How's that? Okay. So that's me. I'm turning over to Councilor Vogel to close us out. Do you need to like gavel out or something?
Yeah, that would, yes. Well, does anybody at the table have anything else that they would quickly like to add? If not, then yes.
And just as thinking about as a planner, strategically thinking about all the parties in the room to now, and I always kind of with these committee meetings think of the city calendar. I don't know if it makes any sense to look to the calendar to find a date that does work for both the members here in the group, but also the city calendar, thinking about other events that might be happening overlapping, versus trying to figure out a date later. I'll leave it to the chair, of course.
Well, I threw out the 15th, which happens to be a Thursday. I don't know, but I mean, obviously, we don't want to get too. I mean, at the latest, it would be that week of the 16th. Is there a consensus on that? You know?
14th looks free. No city meeting.
Oh, you got
I just thought it might be.
Go. I didn't even look up.
I just found oftentimes it's easier with everybody in the room to agree upon a time that works. And as the mayor said, certain dates we can see right away. There's no conflict, but I'll defer to you and the others. On
that the 14th.
Sounds good to me.
14th. Okay.
I will be here then. Same time, 7 o'clock.
Same time, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, we will book this space. Obviously, we'll confirm that tomorrow morning. If there's any reason we have to relocate to another location, we'll let you know. Otherwise, we'll definitely expect to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you all very
for
much.
joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for saying.
Thank you.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, well. And
So,
You're looking at 7